Pitchford Hall's a truly lovely building. I used to pass on long cycle rides as a child. It was derelict for many years, and I was delighted when it and its treehouse, actually the oldest in the world, were restored. However, I cannot help feeling that the current owners are using ghost sightings to drum up business for its guest house. Although don't doubt that the hall and its gardens too be haunted, not least as it's been described as Britain's most haunted house, but then many places are. Lady Mary Combe had an experience of seeing some cavaliers in the garden. Robin Grant, a former resident, used to smoke specially imported cigarillos from South America. After he died, Renison the caretaker noticed the smell of tobacco in the pantry. When Robin was alive, he'd smoked these cigarillos in the pantry, whilst having long conversations with Renison, who was polishing the silver there. Now, Renison's wife Gladys had the same experience. Also, the estate staff encountered the smell. Mrs. Renison actually saw Robin in a herringbone tweed coat with fairy lining, and Robin did indeed own a herringbone coat in black and white herringbone tweed coat with fair lining. Mrs. Renison then described to her husband what she'd seen, and they both agreed that they'd seen Mr. Grant, even though she had not seen his features. In August 1990, when the hall and garden were open to the general public, many guides experienced the smell. An American guide, who was most put out, as she'd always before, denied the existence of ghosts. And many members of the general public also smelled the tobacco during the month of August 1990. Indeed, over 100 people have had an experience of smelling these cigarillos. This can happen in any part of the hall, at any time of the day or night. Russell Schraff, a Canadian psychic, described various ghosts, both inside the hall and the gardens, and he too smelled tobacco. These included Room A. He had a feeling of a boy and a girl, two very happy children who were playing up and down the priest's hall, in which Prince Rupert is said to have hidden following the siege of Shrewsbury. In Room B, the bedroom in which Queen Victoria slept in 1832 when she was 13 years old, Mr. Schraff said there were children playing around the oak chest by the window and sitting on it and inside it. In fact, the hall was also prepared as a sanctuary for the royals should the Nazis have invaded London. Bathroom C, a man of a pompous and overbearing character who'd been very sceptical of ghosts during his lifetime, and he had in fact denied their existence. Room D, a woman who sat in a chaise longue and in the armchair on the left. Bathroom D, a woman who hated the bath, and the same woman who was in bedroom D. Room E, a very happy elderly woman. An old lady wearing a sort of dressing gown who came out in the middle of the bathroom and on the landing on the first floor and proceeded to potter into room G. A man in a black coat with a large hat with plume feathers and some sort of armour underneath, going up the staircase from the man trap. He thought he was a cavalier. A woman, tallish, who walked into the kitchen and then on into the laundry room via the ante-kitchen. The nursery bathroom, an extremely unhappy young woman in bed, obviously before the bathroom had been installed, who had died in childbirth. A general flat bedroom, a red-faced man in tweeds and breeches. A library in the porter's chairs. Mr. Schraff said that there was a serf sitting there who was calm, docile. He was wearing blue breeches and a bright yellow coat with silver buttons. Tinkery, a man who committed suicide, apparently a gamekeeper called Mr. Whitrick, had done this earlier this century by walking into the top fish pond. Some locals say that Pontesford and Lord's Hill are a sleeping dragon. If you look at it, it does have an unusual shape. In fact, it's the site of an old Iron Age fort, and as always, legends grow up around it. Another legend collected to the area says that it's either the King of Mercia or the King of Wessex lost golden arrow here in the 7th century, and can only be found by the 7th daughter of a 7th son on Palm Sunday. But this doesn't stop others looking for it any time of the year. The legend gave Mary Webb the title of her first book, The Golden Arrow. On top of Pontesford Hill is said to be a haunted yew tree. There's a tradition of young people from Pontesbury running up to the tree on Palm Sunday. This was to pick a branch that was said to bring good luck. They would then race down to the brook, which they dipped the 4th finger of their left hand into. It is believed that the next suitable person they met, they would marry. Acton Burnell Castle is a 13th century fortified manor house. The second Parliament was held near the castle in 1285, and from these meetings a new law to protect creditors known as the Statute of Acton Burnell was passed. Today all that remains is the outer shell of the manor house and the gable end of the barn in the playing fields of Concord College. It's a Grade 1 listed building on the sanctuary of listed buildings of special architectural or historic interest. A ghostly girl in white is said to haunt the ruined site. A student managed to photograph a strange misty face in 2004 and reported hearing scratching noises. Well, when cycling past Pitchford Hall, my destination was actually Acton Burnell Castle, which I'd always found to be a lovely, peaceful place. Acton Burnell Hall. A spirit only appeared once, entering a bedroom and announcing masses at 8 o'clock, before disappearing. Albrighton, the 18th century inn, the Horns of Boningale, which has had a number of ghostly encounters, including a mischievous spirit called Henry. One story is that at one time Shropshire sheep drovers would stay in a bunkhouse at the inn, which has now become the dining room. The story goes that a fight between two drovers resulted in the death of one of them. Since then, the apparition of a man dressed in a smock has been seen several times in the dining room. Bomere Heath, 2 brothers stopped playing and ran and hid after spotting a ghostly grey knight standing at the top of their staircase. One of the brothers also reported waking at night to see a man smoking a pipe at the foot of the bed, while their mother said that she had seen faces whilst on the staircase. Bomere Heath, on a small road between Bomere Heath itself and Walford, near the railway bridge, a driver and his wife watched an elderly lady wearing grey with a headscarf run across the road ahead of them. The scene was weird, as the figure looked wispy and her clothes appeared to be moving slower than the woman herself. Stranger still, the driver had watched her cross the road from the left-hand side, and his wife had seen her cross from the right. Fitz Manor in Bomere Heath is an Elizabethan Grade 2 listed building. It has a rich and varied history. The existing building dates from 1450, but the original structure is thought to have been a Saxon hall. The first written records date from the 12th century, where it's recorded in the Domesday Book. It's also recorded in the Charter of Henry I. The manor also has a rich ecclesiastical connections. Significantly, it has its own church that was once owned by the Bishop of Shrewsbury. A priest is rumoured to have been crucified in the dining room for being homosexual, and groans and sobs have been heard there. Additionally, the figure of a lady has been seen several times in the red bedroom. She thought to haunt the graveyard. Reputedly, there are a painting in the attic of a young Victorian lady who bears an uncanny resemblance to the figure that's been seen on the grounds. Finally, in the orange bedroom, people have smelt a strong and pungent tobacco smell, even though nobody has been smoking. This is thought to have been the ghost of a family member who smoked a distinctive brand of tobacco that he deported himself. In Fitz, robbed of her jewels after death, a wealthy local woman came back post-mortem, taking the form of a white horse. The phantom horse is reputed to be so bold that it would occasionally manifest during the daytime. Hasler Hill in Church Stretton, the screams of a young girl haunt an old copper mine, where she fell to her death down an open shaft. Enchmarsh, on a road leading through the village, two men driving through the village encountered a colourless horse and rider standing in the middle of the road. The rider appeared to be dressed in 17th century clothing. The horse then galloped away into a nearby field. Frodesley, a phantom coach pulled up by a team of horses across this area, was said to appear every night, although the current status is unknown. The bear in Hodnet, a phantom known as Jasper, found in the pub, is said to be very friendly. One paranormal group said the phantom was Jasper Nielsen, a merchant who died of hypothermia late in the 16th century. The Bear is one of the nicest pubs in Shropshire. I've never experienced anything there. Hopton Castle, the ghosts of 28 parliamentarians, return on the 14th of March each year. They held out the castle against a force of 500 royalists for 2 weeks. The siege only ended when the defenders were tricked into surrendering in exchange for their lives. But they were slaughtered when they left the building. A maid is also reported to walk the site. The Linley balls of light were seen around the village, one on the church tower and the other passing through a cottage. While the lights were thought to be connected to a phantom white lady said to haunt the area, it could be possible they relate to a geographical fault line which runs through the area. Longden, on the 11th of October 2010, a female witness reported waking up in the early hours and hearing the distinct shouts and cheers of hundreds of men. She awoke her husband, who also heard it, and the sounds appeared to upset the local dogs, which began to bark. The White Lady of Longnor is said to appear clothed in a long white wedding dress on or by the road bridge near the village. She is thought to have thrown herself into the water below after being deserted at the altar. On the road running by the church in Montford, a large hound was reputed to haunt the area that had been mistaken for a ghostly donkey and quickly disappeared into the mist before being kicked by a passerby. The Bottle and Glass in Picklescott, the sound of a man with a wooden leg has been heard walking around this pub. And now, the Bottle and Glass is one of my favourite pubs in Shropshire, and I've visited it many times without noticing anything. On Google Street View, the image on the site from Stokesay Castle shows what looks like to be a torso of a person in one of the windows. This possible apparition can be seen in the lower right window of the building, which then leads to the castle. Around Wilderhope Manor, a die-hard royalist, Smallman's home was once besieged by Roundheads during the latter stages of the Civil War. The Major managed to escape on horseback, and his ghost is now seen galloping away from the building. The manor itself is also reported to be haunted by both Smallman and the shade of a young girl who smiles at any witness before screaming horribly. Wroxeter, a local poem, stated, "Near the brook of Bell there is a well, which is richer than any man can tell. A Yeaton on the road between the village and Baschurch, a murder took place many years ago, which is said to have become the home of a headless black dog. Preston Hall at Preston Brockhurst is a magnificent house. It was built somewhere between 1640 and 1780 and contains 250 acres. I used to pass it on my moped every Friday on my way to see Sol Sam at the Raven in Preston Heath. Every time I passed it, I would vow to buy it one day. Of course I never did, nor was I ever that wealthy. Samuel Winfield, Esquire, of Whitehall, Shrewsbury, son of Thomas Winfield, Mayor of Shrewsbury in 1640 in the Civil War, purchased the estate from the royalists of Vincent Corbett, who had to sell to pay Parliament a fine of £1,588, 13 shillings and fourpence, plus £80 a year for his ransom. Samuel built Preston Hall. His ancestor, Major Walter C. Winfield, is credited with having invented lawn tennis. There have apparently been various sightings of Winfield's ghost at Preston Brockhurst. Marie Corey, née Lloyd Butler, who died in 1966, wrote, "A lady ghost, Miss Winfield, haunts the house. Her portrait hangs at Burton, and I know the Lamberts would love to show it to you. It's above the door of one of the sitting rooms." In 1675, apparently, Peregrina Winfield, one of the sisters of Thomas Winfield, then aged around 8, was engaged to be married when a fiancé, a kinsman of theirs named William Chews, clerk of the Check, was killed in a duel in the garden there at the house. On the 11th of October, the poor distraught Peregrina Winfield proceeded to hang herself inside the house. Half her estate as a dowry had already been made over to her fiancé. I'd like to draw your attention to the famous ghost photographed at Wem Town Hall that I've described in previous vlogs. It's almost certainly, the picture was almost certainly doctored using a 1922 postcard.